So our final presentation today will be from the student team that has been working with the Massachusetts Alliance Against Predatory Lending.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our presentation. I'm Cable Ashara.
I'm Sam Gould.
I'm Caitlin Kuzma.
And I'm Patrick O'Mullen.
And our project is centralizing Massachusetts foreclosure data by developing a user-friendly database. Our project aims to address the widespread problems of predatory lending and illegal foreclosure. The 2008 housing bubble provides some recent context for these topics. In 2008, 3.1 million foreclosures were filed, which means that 1 in 54 American households received a notice that year, a much higher figure than the current 1 in over 11,000. Comparatively, it is estimated that 1 in 14 Massachusetts households has experienced foreclosure in the last 2 decades. While one may hope that the effects are long gone by now, in a 2018 survey, almost 10% of mortgage holders believed that it was likely that their residence would be foreclosed, even though the rate of the foreclosure at the time was below 1%. Further, the vast majority of Massachusetts loans which have received notices in recent years originated between 2003 and 2008. A large contributor to the 2008 housing bubble was predatory lending. So let's talk about what predatory lending is, who it affects, and why it's a prevailing issue even today. Predatory lending can be defined as a practice of a lender which imposes unfair and abusive loan terms on borrowers. These unfair and abusive tactics may take the form of subprime loans, hidden fees, adjustable interest rates, or large balloon payments at the end of the life of the loan, all which can greatly increase the total loan repayment. Due to a lack of knowledge, a borrower may never even realize that they have accepted a predatory loan. And although predatory lending is well known from its ties to the 2008 financial crisis, it and similar illegal practices have been around for hundreds of years and are still happening today. Past racist practices like redlining and the general segregation of wealth have made minority populations, particularly African Americans, longtime targets of predatory lending practices. While laws have been enacted to help fight predatory lending, many are not strict enough or not even enforced, which doesn't help solve the issue. Additionally, predatory lending can be hard to fight in court because its definition is loose and highly contested. Predatory lending all too often leads to foreclosure. There are multiple foreclosure processes in Massachusetts, but the most popular process is foreclosure by sale, which is shown on the slide. As you can see from the figure, it is a long, complex process with many steps. The process starts when a borrower defaults on their mortgage. Defaulting is not automatic. The bank must declare a borrower in default and send a letter informing the borrower that they have fallen too far behind on their payments. Next, there is a 90-day cure period. During this time, the bank and the borrower can adjust the terms of the loan, or the borrower can get back on track with payments. If either of these things happen, the borrower is no longer in default. If the cure period passes and the borrower is still in default, the foreclosure process moves on to an active duty military check, which is almost always the only time a court is involved in the foreclosure process. The idea behind this step is that no one in active duty should lose their home. If the borrower is not in active duty military, the process continues and the bank files foreclosure affidavits in the local registry of deeds. The bank does not have to inform the borrower that they did this. The borrower must check the registries themselves. Next, the bank must advertise the auction of the foreclosed home for 3 consecutive weeks in the local newspaper. The auction cannot legally happen until 3 consecutive weeks of ads have been run. After the property is auctioned off, the bank must send post-foreclosure notices such as who purchased the home and accounting information. At this point, the eviction process can begin, which is a separate process in Massachusetts. Foreclosure by sale is a non-judicial process, which is self-regulated by the banks who can buy the houses they are auctioning. Illegal foreclosure can happen due to a lack of oversight when banks take advantage of borrowers' knowledge about the process or lack thereof.
As Cable mentioned on the previous slide, there are many steps in the foreclosure process. Throughout the process, many different documents are completed and filed, such as various types of affidavits, notices, and a foreclosure deed. 21 registries of deeds across the state of Massachusetts store these documents, which are available online through each registry's website. Documents and data are stored slightly differently across the registries, and there's no way to access all of this data in one place. Additionally, while all documents relating to a foreclosure case are usually stored in the registry most localized to the property in question, authority documents such as power of attorney may be stored in a different registry than others. Now that we've discussed some background about our project, I'll now introduce our project sponsor. Over the past several weeks, we have worked in cooperation with the Massachusetts Alliance Against Predatory Lending, or MAPLE. This organization was founded in 2007 and consists of about 60 sub-organizations and advocacy groups. MAPLE works to fight against predatory lending and illegal foreclosure in many ways. Members lobby for statewide housing reforms, work to repurchase foreclosed homes, protest auctions, and provide help to predatory lending and foreclosure victims. One of MAPLE's goals is to prosecute illegal foreclosures on a larger scale by proving patterns of predatory lending and illegal foreclosures by lenders. For MAPLE to achieve its goal, a central database is needed to compile all foreclosure documents from the 21 registries of deeds across the state. By compiling all of this data, MAPLE can perform broad data and legal analysis. This analysis will help MAPLE fight against serial predatory lenders and systemic foreclosure in court. This yellow box highlights where our project fits in MAPLE's plan to prosecute illegal foreclosures. On the next slide, Sam will discuss more about our project objectives and how our project contributes to MAPLE's goal.
The goal of our project is to further develop MAPLE's data management system and overall data management plan. To do this, we requested foreclosure data from the Massachusetts Registries of Deeds, updated MAPLE's existing database structure to accommodate the new documents and data of interest, and created a user interface to interact with the database. As we completed these tasks, we documented our work and created a future development guide to ensure stability of the system going forward. This is an overview of the workflow of the data management system we created. After data is collected, there are two ways in which it can be entered into the database. At the top is manual data entry, in which a volunteer would have the documents from the registries of deeds in front of them, and they would manually enter data into the data entry interface we created. On the bottom is automated data entry, in which the index data we received from the registries of deeds would be cleaned and filtered to relevant documents and translated from Excel spreadsheets to database code. Once data is in the database, it can be found using the search interface we created, and from the search interface, it can be exported to a CSV for legal analysis. To collect data for the database, we created a public records request email to send to every registry of deeds. After sending this request to ask for index data and copies of documents related to foreclosure, this slide shows our results. As you can see in the key, the green dots are the registries we received data from, and the red dots are registries who declined to send data. We received data from 12 of the 21 registries, or 57% of the registries. Additionally, the starred registries are registries that MAPLE has a special interest in getting data from, since these areas were particularly hard hit by the 2008 housing crisis. To store the data we received from the other registries, we created a database. This slide shows a simplified entity relationship diagram. Each box represents a table in the database, which stores data from each of the documents deemed important in foreclosure by MAPLE. Pooled mortgage documents and tax assessment records are not stored in the registries of deeds, but in the SEC and town assessor's offices, respectively. But our team made space for them in the database and added the documents from the registries of deeds. As you can see, there are many arrows pointed to the mortgage table. These arrows represent references to the mortgage table from other tables using the ID of a specific mortgage. This makes the mortgage ID function as the ID of a foreclosure so that we can relate all documents using the foreclosure ID. The structure allows future developers to edit one part of the database without editing the entire database. New tables can be added and related to the mortgage without interrupting the structure of other tables. This is the structure of the back-end database our front-end user interface interacts with, which Patrick will discuss next.
So this slide gives a brief overview of how data can be manually entered into the database. In this slide, you see a user entering data referring to our user manual and our annotated foreclosure documents to help them understand how to interact with the system and how to recognize data of interest. This volunteer is entering data into the system from a mortgage document. They're looking at the annotated mortgage document highlighted in the red box, which highlights important fields in the document that will be relevant to enter into the database. They then use, as pictured in the GIF in the bottom right of the slide, the data entry interface in order to enter that information. Once complete, the database queries the system and stores the new information. After volunteers have entered this data into the database, what you can see here is an example of a legal analyst trying to access that data. The database can be searched using a variety of fields, and there are common fields across all documents. Once a specific document type is selected, certain fields that attribute themselves only to that document will appear. In this example, we're going to select the Worcester South Registry and query the data. Once the search records button is hit, it will inform you that it's loading, and you will see tabulated list of documents where upon you click one, you see all the results for that specific document type. And once we reach the bottom of the screen, you'll see a download CSV button, which allows you to export all of the data from the mortgages under your filtered search into a CSV for further analysis. In addition to creating the data management system, we have created recommendations for future development. The two main areas of future development are data-specific projects and system projects. Data projects involve tasks such as acquiring and cleaning data. Two data sources that we created room in the database for but did not reach out to the sources were the SEC, who stores the pooled mortgages, and the town assessor's offices, who store tax valuation data. Related tasks could also involve using optical character recognition, or better known as OCR, to automate data collection from document images. Developing data cleaning protocols is also an area of future development because many registries give extraneous documents that cannot be filtered out when fulfilling a public records request. And on top of that, the registries also store data differently from place to place. So developing protocols to standardize the index data makes automated data entry much easier. For system projects, this is mainly broken down into the front end and back end improvements. For the front end, there are components that we recommend be added, such as connecting Maple's case intake form to the user interface that we created over the course of this project. And for the back end, we identified gaps in the information stored in the database, so adding more tables and fields would increase the usefulness of the database going forward. So to take a step back and conclude our presentation, we wanted to really emphasize the larger picture of our work. We hope that what we've done over the last 7 weeks can be utilized as a sort of stepping stone for future projects that can further advance Maple's fight against foreclosure and predatory lenders. We designed this tool with the hopes that one day it might play a role in finally achieving justice and restitution for the many people impacted due to predatory lending and foreclosure. It is our hope that our project and future iterations of it done by future workers can help Maple make things a little bit better in the world.
Finally, we'd like to thank the following people who advised our work on this project: Grace Ross, Drs. Rick Baz and Chris Demetri, Dr. Scott Justo, Steve Floridia, and the helpful individuals across Massachusetts registries who assisted us with our data requests. This concludes our presentation, and we will take any questions or comments at this time.
Woohoo!
Yeah, no, that's great. Really professionally delivered. I apologize I couldn't get all of it because the client called me just right before 5, but really well done.
Thank you so much.
We have a question in the chat from Professor Beton Samase. Great work, team. Is there a solution or workaround to get the data from the registries who did not respond to your request?
I can tackle this one. We are currently talking to someone at the Registries of Deeds department in the Secretary of State's office, and he has forwarded our request to different registries. Because they are stored on different systems, the State Department can only help with the state-run registries, which is 13 of the 21, and the other registries are just going to have to be repeated public records requests potentially. But the workaround at the moment is to use the Secretary of State's office for the registries that are on the state system.
If anybody else has questions or comments, I just invite you to unmute yourself and
Oh, hi. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
First, this is Bishop Tony Branch. I want to first say great work. Exceptional work by the students, WPI, exceptional support. And we thank Grace for being such a content expert to be able also to coordinate some of this. I guess my question really goes back to what has been mentioned with respect to the Secretary of State's office. So I do several FOIA requests throughout the year. Many are denied by local municipalities, in which I appeal to the Secretary of State's office, the supervisor of public records. And all municipalities, whether they're county or state, county or city, must respond to these requests. So I'm just want to go back a little bit to get a clear understanding. Are the registrars not complying with the requests as given by the supervisor of public records?
I can talk a little bit about this one. So while the registries are required to respond to our requests, they aren't actually required to fulfill it. Since technically all of the data is available on their websites, they can just say, well, we don't have the staff to fulfill this request, or we can't fulfill your request, but you can go to the website. However, the issue with that is that with the size of our requests, it's kind of impossible for us to just go on the website and download hundreds of thousands of records at once.
Thank you for that. And from now I see how they are kind of scurrying around the law. I mean, the second option, they were supposed to actually respond saying that if we wanted to pay for that sort of data mining, then we would proceed. But nonetheless, this is exceptional work. I'm in Plymouth County, and I'm going to tell you that they need to comply. Maybe we can do something politically, but I appreciate the work that you guys have done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, hi. This is Sarah McKee. May I speak? Okay.
of course.
Go ahead.
Thanks. I've got limited data on my screen, apparently. I'm a retired prosecutor, and I have volunteered with Maple since 2014. And I cannot thank you enough by giving us the tools to not only take a conceptual leap, but a leap of instrumentality. I'm not putting this very well, but we have not had these tools. And the foreclosure process in Massachusetts is intricate and ridiculous. And I applaud you guys for getting your minds around it as comprehensively as you did. I'm concerned about the South Essex response. I know the Register of Deeds there. I know it's technical people, and I was quite surprised to see that South Essex was not on the good guy list here. Is there a story?
I can take this one. So they actually did intend to fulfill our request. Due to extenuating circumstances, things went awry, and we'll be following up, but it wasn't as much as they refused to fulfill the request or redirected it, as much as there was a matter that occurred that was unforeseen and made acquiring that data in our time frame very difficult to do.
Good, thank you very much, because I was on the Massachusetts Legislature's Registry of Deeds Commission in 2013, and learned quite a bit about the idiosyncratic approach to data management in the 21 registries. And South Essex seemed to me to be far on top of that, far better than anyone else. So I'm glad to hear that you might be getting data from them. Again, thanks.
Thank you.
This is Scott Justo. I also work at WPI and had the pleasure of working with the team. Guys, I think you did a fantastic job. I'm really so pleased with the effort and the accomplishment. Really a fabulous job. And I'm wondering, on the system development side, as you think about, you know, the pathway to some, you know, the pathway to bringing this alive, doing the analysis bit, what are the sort of major steps that you see, and what, like, how big are they? And could they be done with by hiring students, or just what you're thinking about those next steps?
I can take this. So one of the recommendations we put forward in our future development guide was a tangential project that goes into identifying. So this could be run probably by a student team or anyone who wanted to be hired, or for that matter, where it would be identifying the legal requirements and what generally goes into actually prosecuting a lender for suspected, you know, predatory lending and for closing upon certain communities. And so identifying a list of attributes of what's needed, and then taking that and building some sort of pipeline, which could be done over 2 different sets of work, for example, where in one case, you identify all those requirements, then you build out a pathway of, this is how you export the data from here to here. You can use these tools and so on and so forth. So a more non-technical approach where it's creating an actual pipeline to do that kind of analysis. The other approach would be more technically involved and actually would fit very well coming after the first one, which an application can actually be built separately from the database to do that sort of analysis, or it could be built into what we've already set up where you can do analysis from the existing front end. So I think future teams, future volunteers with technical capacity, and even hired students would be able to fulfill those tasks going forward.
Thanks. And could you take a wild guess as to how much effort, and maybe the unit of work could be, you've just done an amazing job building this database and its associated components, you know, the options of those 2 pathways, does that represent, you know, an effort akin to what you've just done, or half of that? Can you guess at that?
I would, in a completely like non-judgmental or evaluative stance of how hard they'd be working compared to us, I would say that the more technical, they're 2 different in terms of scope and required knowledge to really assess that strongly. I would say it's easier to draw a more parallel comparison to our work with the idea of building an app from the ground up for analysis. So that would probably be on par with what we've been doing. As far as identifying the needs of legal analysts and actually building forward with a pipeline or a pathway for that, I would say that it's a little bit less technically involved, but it's way more involved in terms of outreach and interviewing and studies and connections. So it's very, I would say it's a similar amount of work. It's just a very different dimension of an IQP or any other work outside of WPI students.
Great, thanks.
We have a
Esther
question.
raised her hand. Yeah.
Okay, we have a question from Grace. in the chat. Isn't there some upload of the registry data that has to be done?
I can take this one. So currently in the database, we got the indexed data from Worcester South into the database, and the scripts that we wrote to upload Worcester South's registry could be modified to upload other registries into the database. The problem was our time constraints. And Worcester South was deemed the most efficient way to get the most data in because Worcester South gave us much more data than many of the other registries. But we have data from the registries listed. It's just not all currently in the database. You are muted, Grace.
Okay, back to the technical side of what sort of building on what Scott asked, though, the at some point very soon, right, we're going to have much more data, and the Worcester South registry setup is on the one that the state uses, and so that's a lot of the biggest registries are available that way. But I'm still assuming that somebody would have to have the technical skills to look at the peculiarities of how any one registry, so to speak, codes their data into that interface, and that it's going to be slightly different, right, for different registries. And so in fact, there's somebody has to have the technical skills. And back to the question that Patrick was answering, it's like, what is the level of technical skill to get from that data that we're going to get to having it actually in the searchable database?
Yeah, so additionally, before we do any sort of like legal analysis, there is the issue that the registries do not necessarily index. For example, what was a specific, if the affiant swears to follow Chapter 35B on the registry affidavits. So some of the, some technical teams are going to would have to make a push to use either optical character recognition or something to automate data entry so that legal analysis could be done. But getting the scripts to upload the data into the database is less of a grueling aspect time-wise from a technical aspect, more that running 100,000 data entry takes a very, very long time to run the code. But it did not, there's tutorials on the internet on how to read a CSV and translate that into SQL, and it was not the most technically challenging part of our project.
Okay.
Creating the database was more.
Yeah, I got it. I'm just trying to, my head's in the planning ahead side of things.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much time people have, and if Esther had a question, she should go first. But one thing that I think might be fun for folks would be to actually use the interface, the user interface, you know, for just maybe 3 or 4 minutes, have one of you actually enter data into it so that people could see how it works. But Esther, I know had a question, maybe other people do.
I'd also like to say I have extensive database programming experience, so I could easily take care of that task going forward. And we also have Textract. It's an OCR application from Amazon Web Services, and we have a procedure that's been tested that can help us to get all this data in, depending on what we need to do.
Great.
Esther, did you still have a
question?
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation this afternoon and for creating such a wonderful data system. I am an immigrant homeowner, and I have one of those very bad predatory mortgages. And I am slow in comprehending things when people are discussing, but I was just wondering, is this system only for collecting data from the registries, or is there a system where homeowners can enter their information, the information that they have, so that it makes it easier for Maple to help them?
So can I actually answer part of this and then have you guys answer part of it? So we have a interface, Esther, that's not up and functional right now, where individual homeowners would actually be able to enter all of their data related to their situation. That's one of the things that was on the chart that could get integrated into the system. It doesn't exist. But there's more of an answer to that, and I'm going to let one of them answer it, or maybe you guys want to again pull up the user interface and enter, show somebody how you would, as an individual, enter your, find out about your own stuff.
Patrick, can you pull up the user interface?
I actually didn't have it installed on this computer. That's on my other computer. I came to this one because it has a better signal.
I can pull up the user interface if someone can answer the question while I do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that we wanted to sort of have as a future feature would be that currently what we created right now is very much an in-house solution, meant to be maintained, updated, and sort of kept going by volunteers, with the hopes that future teams would then make it out publicly facing. So anyone could ideally at some point search the database or even enter information. And if Grace, if I'm wrong in this explanation, feel free to correct me, but I think one of the things we did want to include was this case intake form that would help individuals seeking the proper documents as well as with their specific situation. And that's one of the things that we really want to prioritize in getting running on the system.